This program is rated PG and may contain mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
The wheel is one of the fundamental human creations that has shaped our experience on planet Earth.
We see wheels in everything. It's one of those basic human technologies that completely revolutionized history.
The impact of the wheel is extraordinary.
Wheels allowed for the transformation of cities and buildings.
Every aspect of our transportation and manufacturing infrastructure comes back to the wheel.
Very little of our modern society would exist today without the wheel.
The wheel is the single greatest invention in the history of our planet.
Today, we're going to celebrate the wheel by trying to imagine a world where they get stripped away. We're conducting a thought experiment and freezing the motion of some of the most important wheels throughout time to see the profound effects caused by their loss. This is History Erased, the world without the wheel. Of all the ideas and innovations that affect our lives, the wheel is present at every turn. We're going to follow the lives of a group of high school friends and a farming couple to get a glimpse of just how important and influential wheels really are. The first wheels rolled into our ancestors' lives around 4500 BCE in the Near East, Western Asia, Turkey, and Egypt.
What's astonishing is that we didn't invent it for transportation. We invented it for making pottery.
The potter's wheel introduced the world to a rotating disc on an axis.
The essential quality of the wheel, which is that it spins in a perfect circle, allows for fashioning objects that are perfectly symmetrical.
What we created with the potter's wheel wasn't just vessels of storage, but also of storytelling. If you follow the curve around on so many cultures on the planet, you will follow essentially a graphic novel of a great hunt, or a king's life, or a religious fable coming right out of that origin of the pot in the potter's wheel.
Today, in the age of electricity, the potter's wheel remains very similar in design and function to the early models.
We still use that basic spinning technology to produce all sorts of things today.
Clay wasn't the only thing spinning on early wheels. The textile industry rolled into the modern era with the creation of the spinning wheel.
Textiles are very labor intensive to produce.
The spinning wheel was invented around 500 CE. Instead of having to hold a spindle which will turn the thread for you, the spinning wheel does that automatically.
It was really this sense of being able to create something from nothing.
Fabric production took another massive turn forward in 1764, when James Hargreaves of Blackburn, England, invented the wheel-based spinning jenny.
He took a spinning wheel and added 8 spindles so that one spinner could produce 8 times the amount of yarn.
It now allowed for a mass number of threads to be spun in a factory setting, thereby completely amplifying the productivity of the industry. The textile industry today produces about $800 billion worth of materials every single year.
When you consider the versatility of textiles and what we've been able to create from them, it's just incredible.
We live in this kind of age of fast fashion where we expect to be able to buy clothes whenever we want. That wouldn't be possible without wheel technology.
The spinning wheel also became a powerful tool and symbol of activism for Mahatma Gandhi.
And he asked Indians to become more independent, to limit their economic dependence on Britain. And at that time, Britain, the colonial power, had this stranglehold over India through the textile trade. So what Gandhi said to people was, rather than relying on British fabrics, use a spinning wheel to make your own fabric, and then we won't have this dependence on this colonial power anymore.
The revolution of the wheel began over 5 millennia ago.
The oldest wheel we know of is 5,150 years old from a Slovenian marsh.
It was finely crafted and spun on an axle, under a cart.
The wheelbarrow, a brilliant device allowing a human being to carry heavy loads they otherwise would not have been able to carry because there's a single wheel at the front of a cart.
One of the early ways in which the wheelbarrow was used in China was shifting artillery, even people, over distances.
It seems so intuitively obvious to us now, but it was a revolutionary breakthrough.
You can still go to a hardware store, pick up a wheelbarrow, not very different from one that would have been used centuries earlier, and it will be just as useful to you when you're digging up your garden.
The tactical contributions of the wheel to hunting and warfare have been revolutionary.
If you take a cart, which is two wheels and one axle, and you attach it to a horse, well, now you've got a chariot. And this was a game changer for a lot of civilizations. You could move quickly, you could hack at people from a higher angle, and of course, if you are battling someone who doesn't have a chariot, you have the upper hand.
In the ancient context, chariots were available only to elites, and they were expensive.
Godlike figures were often depicted on chariots. The best, most skilled warriors were always also skilled chariot riders, so it held a very high place in society.
Away from the battlefield, wheels moved society with the creation of the wagon.
Now you have a very mobile way of taking not just yourself, but all your worldly possessions.
The four-wheeled wagon, absolutely essential as far as the human migration around the planet was concerned.
Carriages emerged around the 15th, 16th century, and they were really the kind of preserve of noble people so that they could travel around in style.
Whether it's a royal wedding or a royal funeral or the coronation of a new king or queen, that ornate four-wheeled carriage is always a part of it.
During the early 19th century, the wagon helped open up the North American West.
The prairie schooner was instrumental in helping families move into the West. It was covered with white canvas cloth, which looked like sails going across the prairies.
The only reason 400,000 settlers were able to traverse this path was because of the prairie schooner.
The wheel also offered a revolutionary mode of personal transportation in 1817, when German noble and inventor Carl von Drais put one wheel in front of another and built the first bicycle.
A brilliant engineer said, I wonder if a person could balance on a vehicle with a wheel in front and a wheel in back.
The impetus of the bicycle was not due to a desire, but rather a serious need.
In 1815, there was a huge eruption in Indonesia at Mount Tambora. It was so bad that the following year was known as the Year Without Summer because the entire northern hemisphere was affected by the volcanic ash produced by the explosion.
Lots of horses got sick, lots of horses died.
What was needed, of course, by people was another means of transportation.
And of necessity, the bicycle was invented.
This individual form of transportation was also empowering.
Especially in the early women's rights suffragist movements, it was seen as a symbol of female emancipation. It was a vehicle for women's empowerment as well as a literal vehicle.
The bicycle gave women a lot of independence to do things on their own without supervision.
In 1894, Annie Londonderry, a Jewish immigrant from Latvia, empowered people around the world with her stunning accomplishment.
She rode around the world on her bike. After this feat was accomplished by a man, she had overheard men saying that women wouldn't be able to do the same thing, and what she did was prove them wrong.
Since then, for our group of friends and people around the world, bicycles have become an essential part of human daily life as a means of transportation and leisure.
Bicycles have been very important in modern civilization.
It's incredible how bicycles are able to maneuver and flow in traffic. it's also obviously much better for the environment.
There are over 1 billion bikes in the world, and they are a key part of our sustainable transportation infrastructure for the 21st century.
But now, as we roll into our thought experiment and freeze the first wheels of innovation, the pottery wheel and spinning wheel grind to a halt, throwing those industries into chaos.
What we've been able to do with textiles is really incredible. The disappearance actually has a lot of impact.
Without the spinning wheel, we wouldn't have the clothes on our backs.
Our potter throws a dud as her wheel fails her.
It would be a disaster. Your kitchen would be a mess of liquid spilling everywhere.
Around the world, carts, wagons, and wheelbarrows freeze in their tracks.
Without wagons, we wouldn't see the level of migration that allowed for the settling of different parts of many countries.
Bicycles cease to function, throwing off our friends and stranding millions of commuters.
You can imagine just a very, very small, seemingly innocuous things like a bicycle disappearing would have a lot of impact.
Bicycles have become such an integral part of our transportation infrastructure that if they were to disappear, the gridlock would be an absolute nightmare.
What will happen next to our world as we move on with our thought experiment and erase key wheels from the industrial age? As our look into game-changing benefits of the wheel continues, we move on to some of its groundbreaking contributions to the industrial age. It all started with steam.
1st century CE, there was a Greek thinker, Hero of Alexandria.
He wanted to make a toy, and he did. A metal ball with straws sticking out at opposite angles and liquid that it could heat within. The exhaust of the steam would spin it around.
And that spinning novelty became the predecessor of the most important development of the Industrial Revolution, the steam engine.
Steam power changed the whole nature of power.
The first actual practical application of the steam engine was to drive pumps to get the water out of the coal mines. James Watt recognized that the same basic principle could be used for a very powerful steam engine.
He adapted them to provide rotational power, which opened up the applications for the steam engine tremendously.
The steam engine negated the dependency on water as a source of power. Now they could be put anywhere. It creates the ability to manufacture a tremendous quantity of things.
Today, factories have progressed based on those early models and are commonplace around the globe, manufacturing the goods of our modern society. Another James Watt innovation that surrounds our daily lives uses its weight and momentum to keep the power steady.
A flywheel is basically a large rotating mass, and once you set that spinning, it is able to convert stored energy from one form to another.
It's a way to smooth out the power that's being generated and drive something in a smooth fashion.
Flywheels are essentially everywhere.
From toys to transportation and appliances to heavy machinery, flywheels are vital to transferring smooth rotational energy from the power source. With steam engines pumping goods out of new factories, better distribution systems were needed, and big steel wheels rolling along the tracks changed the game.
We see Richard Trevithick develop the steam-powered engine running on a narrow track. That would come to revolutionize transport and travel.
I think it was a quantum leap to trains.
Rail transportation was really critical to transport these goods that were being produced to new markets.
It's a tribute to how brilliant the concept of trains were, that they are still thriving and they're really essential.
Today, the global rail industry plays a fundamental role in nearly every sector of the economy, moving over $200 billion worth of goods and 53 billion passengers annually. As cities expanded, rail transportation went underground with the London Metropolitan Railway in 1863.
Now, urban planning everywhere in the world is built around rapid transit, buried underground subway systems.
Above the ground, a new type of motor would power the next revolution and keep our young friends on the move.
The internal combustion engine opened up a whole new means of travel, specifically the automobile.
It takes in air and gas, it compresses it, and then it explodes it, and then it exhausts it. The explosion drives a piston, and the piston is connected to a wheel.
If you could coordinate enough of that with 3, 4, 5, 8 cylinders, then you had a continuous mechanism to rotate wheels.
Germany was the hotbed for automobile innovation in the late 19th century.
Carl Benz was credited with making the first practical gasoline-fueled car. To demonstrate the power of this technology, his wife Bertha set out on the world's first road trip and demonstrated just how powerful this new form of transportation would become.
As early automobiles became more popular, their production techniques were revolutionized by another rolling innovation with a lot of wheels.
The automobile is inextricably linked to the assembly line, which Henry Ford invented. And the assembly line was a quick way to assemble cars. Each station was very specialized. They only did one thing.
Assembly lines were also vital to the war effort during World War II.
There was a great need for a lot of aircraft very quickly. The Ford company was building B-24 Liberators, large, complex, 4-engine bombers. They applied this assembly line technique, and they were able to churn out one such bomber every 50 minutes, which was staggering.
Other inventions like the bus by Carl Benz and the truck by Gottlieb Daimler moved people and products in new and efficient ways, including our farming couple who shipped their goods across the country. Today, trucks keep our stores stocked while buses keep our masses moving. One fateful day, a Liverpool bus was the stage that brought the Beatles together.
It was John's band, and Paul had just joined, and they were looking for a pretty good guitarist. John and Paul and George just happened to be on the bus at the same time, and George always carried his guitar, and John would always say, "Give us a tune, George," and it was just one of those random things, I think. So they auditioned George on top of a double-decker bus in Walton, Liverpool. So the story goes.
Wheel-based machines also help feed a hungry world.
In 1828, a Scottish farmer named Patrick Bell invented a two-wheel device drawn by horses with blades that would do the harvesting work for him. And it started the revolution in the automation of agriculture.
Things like tractors and combine harvesters revolutionize what can be done at speed and at bulk on very large-scale farms.
Although more food is produced now by agriculture than at any time in human history, it's only about 2% instead of 90% of the population that works in agriculture.
Today, the combines and large-scale industrial machinery that our farmers use enable the food production that feeds our three friends and the rest of our population. But now, as we continue our thought experiment, the wheels that move vehicles and spin industrial farming grind to a halt.
Our transportation and manufacturing infrastructure falls apart.
That changes a lot about the way we interact with the world.
Our everyday movements are curbed with gridlock.
The car in your driveway can't move.
And without the wheels rolling along the tracks, commuters and commodities are frozen.
If you lost railways, it would be a crippling blow to the economy.
Changes a lot about what we're able to purchase.
And without industrial farming, crisis looms.
Food production, food distribution, both depend crucially on that spinning disc. Take it out of the equation, and it would be an apocalyptic nightmare of starvation.
Next, the day only gets worse as we take the fun out of wheels. As our thought experiment continues and the journey of our three friends and farming couple rolls along, we're going to look at even more incredible contributions from the wheels of play and computer technology.
All work and no play makes people really, really boring. The wheel is essential for our recreational activities today.
And putting four wheels beneath a pair of shoes was just the beginning.
Roller skates were invented over 200 years ago by a very eccentric guy, John Joseph Merlin.
By the 1870s, roller skating had become an international craze and gave the youth of the day a great new outlet and sense of freedom. Nearly a century later, cement surfing rolled into popular culture and the lives of our three friends.
Skateboards became popular in California when local surfers would attach wheels to their boards. In the 1970s, there was a drought in California, which meant that a lot of pools were basically empty.
Skateboard wheels originally were metal. Polyurethane wheels revolutionized the technology of skateboards.
And today, fun on wheels has evolved to faster, thrilling, and competitive activities like cycle racing, motocross, ATVs, and monster trucks. Wheels of play are also the centerpiece of some of the best games of chance.
Blaise Pascal was trying to invent a perpetual motion machine. And it turned out, of course, that's not possible. Instead of giving us unlimited energy, he gave us the roulette wheel. The Monte Carlo Casino was the place to be seen playing roulette. And it was the inspiration for Ian Fleming to write his first James Bond novel, Casino Royale. Without the roulette wheel, no James Bond, no spy fiction genre.
Turning to the world of audio and visual reproductions, spinning discs shaped the way we see, hear, and archive life, and paved the way for today's digital entertainment.
For most of the 20th century, all of your music came from, basically, the wheel.
Music and the spinning recording medium are inseparably intertwined in our history.
We're talking about vinyl records, cassettes, tape decks, even CDs, all spinning on an axis.
In the 18th century, if anybody wanted to listen to a piece of music, they would have to go to a concert hall or somebody would have to be in their home playing it for them. Now, the music box just changes that game completely because suddenly you can have music in your own living room.
Thomas Edison pushed it further in 1877 when he gave us the phonograph. Soon, anyone could own their favorite music.
To be able to record sounds means that you can capture something and keep it for posterity. That is a sea change in how we think about sound.
The recording of music has always been associated with rotational movement. All of our great musical legacy is on spinning media.
What is the importance of the wheel in recording? It's really the consistent speed. If you vary the speed, then you're going to vary notes and tones.
Spinning reels also opened us to the visual world of capturing and playing back motion images.
One of the lesser known ways that wheels have had an impact on our lives is through film.
What a brilliantly simple system for taking motion picture film, which is successive frames, and storing it on a metal wheel to be able to show the films anywhere that the projector existed.
Movie film not only started the trend that led to today's digital video revolution, it allows us to experience the joys, horrors, and history of the world we live in. During World War II, a code-breaking spinning gear machine helped fight the powers of oppression and fascism.
Since the dawn of time, humans have liked keeping secrets. The Germans used the Enigma machine to encode their secret messages.
Decoding this top-secret information was crucial to the Allies' war effort.
You have a keyboard, and every time you hit the button, one of the rotors turns and you get a new circuit produced and you get a new letter. The more of these rotors you had, the more complicated the encryption became.
Mathematician Alan Turing was tasked with the daunting job of cracking the Enigma code.
His great breakthrough that really saved a lot of lives in World War II was his bomb machine at Bletchley Park that used wheels to decode what the Germans had used other wheels to encode. Now we laud him as one of the great fathers of modern computing.
Without the efforts of Alan Turing, the outcome of the war could have been completely different.
As the world moved into the era of digital computing and recording, the massive amounts of information needed to be stored. Again, the wheel performed that revolutionary task.
Hard disk drives are made up of several spinning disks coated with magnetic particles that store data in binary, where basically they identify ones and zeros.
The technology is advancing towards more solid-state drives, but all of the development in computing over the last 100 years has moved forward as a result of our utilization of spinning disks of the wheel.
Every bit of information, from our farmers' year-end reports, to corporate financials, to selfies on the beach, need hard drive storage.
We are moving into a kind of artificial intelligence future, and all of that is predicated on these computer technologies.
As we roll on with our thought experiment, we freeze the wheels of play and computer technology.
Wheels are so important to every bit of our entertainment and leisure life.
Around the world and with our friends, the wheels of fun grind to a stop, leaving their riders benched.
We wouldn't have skateboards or roller skates. Entertainment would look totally different without the wheel.
You can't really have the same kind of leisure without them.
And some of our most beloved events also have their wheels lock up. The Tour de France crashes. NASCAR racers spin out of control. Formula One is in the pit.
Take away the wheel, there goes music.
What's going on?
Without that technology, we might not have enjoyed a shared culture.
Take away the wheel, there goes cinema.
A lot of things that bring us joy simply wouldn't exist.
Around the planet, as spinning hard drives crash, important data disappears, creating an unprecedented loss of stored digital assets.
Take away the wheel, all of your streaming video, all of the things you watch on your computer or listen to, all of that disappears because hard drives disappear.
I find it impossible to imagine a life without computers. Every single room in my house has some kind of computer device in it.
It would be utterly miserable.
Things will only go from bad to worse as we look at the world without the wheel's heavy lifting contributions. The continuous circle of the wheel has enabled it to be used for groundbreaking and mechanical feats of strength, navigation, and construction. A brilliant system of grooved wheels and rope can literally move mountains and bales of hay for our farmers.
A pulley is a very simple mechanical device that allows you to lift things that are heavier than you normally could.
The ability to utilize pulleys to your mechanical advantage is what allows the progress of modern structures to exist.
In ancient societies and our modern world, pulleys have enabled engineering feats that would have been impossible without them.
Modern cities rely on the ability to lift and relocate significant components from one location to another.
Pulleys don't just move materials.
Guys, look!
They move people, too.
Our dependence on elevators in modern cityscapes, it really can't be overstated.
Elevator and pulley systems allowed for the transformation of cities and buildings.
All of our verticality in our living really requires these little boxes that are pulled up and let down gently by pulleys.
The pulley enabled countless nautical adventures.
The simple pulleys that raised and lowered sails on sailing ships made it possible for us to build schooners and other large sail ships that took people not just across, say, the Mediterranean Ocean, but the Atlantic Ocean, took them out into the Pacific Ocean.
Pulleys allowed the ship to be steered and accommodate for different wind forces. Pulleys were incredibly important in the age of exploration.
If it hadn't been for the age of sail, our world would be vastly different than it is today.
To help keep bearings and orientation on the sea, on land, and even in space, we can thank French physicist Leon Foucault for the multi-wheeled contraption that stabilized and measured angular rotation.
The gyroscope maintains its orientation regardless of what's moving around it. The actual material proof that we live on a rotating world comes from this little thing that we dismiss these days as a toy.
Gyroscopes throughout the 20th century were instrumental in allowing aircraft, spacecraft, ocean-going vessels to move around the planet with great success.
Hey,
Today, gyroscopes are often miniaturized, but they operate with the same basic rotational physics.
It's the key to keeping airplanes level. It's the technology that's in our cell phones so that no matter which way you happen to hold the phone, the photo turns out to be oriented properly.
Another elevating invention combined a pulley with a long arm to create a building machine that still dominates skylines to this day.
The idea of the crane first occurred to Greek engineers, including Archimedes. It allowed a single person instead of 100 or 1,000 slaves to lift great stone blocks. It opened up a whole new level of construction.
The construction of the large buildings that we take for granted today is only made possible through crane technology, which uses pulleys and allows us to lift heavy objects vertically.
Today, cranes are vital in the construction and maintenance of almost every building over 2 stories high.
Cranes made it possible for human beings, for the first time in all of their existence, to expand greater heights vertically than they went horizontally.
As we continue our thought experiment and erase spinning feats of strength, navigation, and construction, the loss throws many off course.
Without the wheel, society grinds to a halt.
Lifting power collapses for our farmers.
You take away the pulley technology, you have no big-scale construction.
We show up to work one day and all the elevators don't work.
And the cranes that build our modern cities are immobilized.
The cities that we see today would not exist without cranes.
If you take away the wheel, you might as well go back to the Stone Age.
As the new reality of life without these wheel-centric innovations shakes the world, we're about to erase even more wheels that give us aviation and power generation. Without the wheel, the global population, including our farming couple and 3 friends, have endured many problems and unexpected events. As our story spins towards the end, we'll explore wheel-enabled innovations in power generation and aviation.
Before we had the internal combustion engine, before we had the steam engine, one way to harness natural power was to convert the energy from flowing water or from wind into rotational energy through the use of water wheels and windmills.
The ancient Egyptians used things like the water wheel, which allowed for irrigation of land that wasn't naturally irrigated through rainfall. Capturing the power of water through a wheel allowed for industrial production of lots of different kinds of commodities. A water wheel could be used to power a grinding stone for grinding grain. It could be used to power a belt that would then provide energy for working all kinds of industrial machinery.
Everything old is new again. Our cleanest of energy forms are entirely based on turning the power of wind into rotational energy caught by windmill blades.
And as we become increasingly hungry as a society for more and more electricity, there is realization that maybe, just maybe, we should try and find cleaner ways to deliver that energy.
Wind and solar energy certainly make it more environmentally friendly.
In the 1870s, American inventor Lester Allen Pelton created the Pelton water wheel, and in doing so, gave the world an efficient water turbine.
It became the basis of the turbines that we use in all of our hydroelectric equipment and all of our dams that also provide an awful lot of water energy for us today.
Dams housing spinning turbines for electricity generation are some of the largest engineering projects our species has undertaken.
Hydroelectric dams have become so important in the production of electricity because of the enormous amounts of power that they generate. Places like the Three Gorges Dam in China is providing electricity to a huge swathe of China.
Pre-industrially, people's day was determined by daylight, so you couldn't work at night, but suddenly you can produce electric light, you can work 24 hours if you want. So hydroelectricity has been instrumental in everything we do today.
Our entire level of comfort comes from the power generated by turbines.
Electrical power also helped to turn the tide for the Allies during World War II.
Because of the use of hydroelectric turbines, the US turned into an industrial powerhouse and allowed them to produce amazing quantities of materials needed during the war, such as airplanes, tanks, machine guns, shells, and bombs. Without this ability to harness this energy to produce these materials, it's quite possible that the Second World War would have ended up totally different.
Turbines also propel us through the sky.
To be able to move around the globe, you need to be able to travel faster. And of course, enter the jet engine.
You get a circular fan at the front, dragging in air. This air is compressed with fuel, and it goes into a combustion chamber, and that develops thrust, and that power is translated into motion.
The turbine jet engine has fueled a totally different way of travel and transportation. People can now see the world. Business has been transformed, and the ability to ship goods takes days instead of months. At any given time, there are 20,000 planes in the air, and on some days, there are over 200,000 planes that take off.
As we near the end of our thought experiment, exploring the many ways the wheel has benefited our lives, we strip away the last remaining elements of our story. As turbines fail, generating stations malfunction, taking power grids offline, the world plunges into darkness. creating a sudden energy crisis that hits every sector of our population.
Energy is what drives modern society. Without hydroelectric power, security disappears. All of your lights go out.
Cities turn off.
And the spinning jet engines seize.
Planes turn into heavy gliders.
That would ultimately result in a crash.
It's almost inconceivable to imagine a world without the wheel. It would be an absolute nightmare.
Without the wheel, it's a global crisis. Creating a sudden energy crisis that hits every sector of our population.
Energy is what drives modern society. Without hydroelectric power, security disappears. All of your lights go out. Cities turn off.
And the spinning jet engines seize.
Planes turn into heavy gliders.
It's almost inconceivable to imagine a world without the wheel. It would be an absolute nightmare.
Without the wheel, it's a global crisis. Today, in our thought experiment, the world has suffered greatly without many of the important advances the wheel has given us. Thankfully, the wheel isn't going anywhere, and we still have all of its amazing rotational innovations.
Hey guys.
And the wheel will certainly roll us into the future, on the ground and in space.
The wheels we use on our Martian and other exploration probes use a whole new kind of material called memory alloy. Even after it's deformed, it comes back to its shape.
And a revolutionary new flywheel may be the power source that gets us to the cosmos.
The way that NASA would like to use this kind of very old technology is in a very modern way.
When we're talking about expansion of humanity into the cosmos, one of the things that we're going to need is energy.
Sunlight is solar power energy stored in flywheel batteries. They spin almost effortlessly, endlessly, until we want to convert the spinning power of the batteries back into engine power. So our oldest use of the wheel is what is powering our most sophisticated space probes.
Back on Earth, in the medical sciences, miniature wheel technology may revolutionize healthcare.
In many ways, as modern technology rolls forward, the idea of nanotechnology has become increasingly important.
It is a very exciting possibility that's currently being investigated by scientists and engineers all over the world. You could create machines that could enter the human body to allow them to treat the things that cause disease. They would operate just like big machines, but on a much smaller scale.
It's a way of building machines out of molecules.
The possibilities are endless.
As we spin into the future, the ever-turning wheel will be rolling along beside us.
I think the wheel is going to be with us for a very long time to come.
I can't see a future without wheel technology.
Maybe not reinventing the wheel, but certainly allowing it to evolve.
We live at the most technologically advanced age ever, and a lot of those advances have taken place because of our utilization of the wheel.
The next generation of wheels is likely to be on the atomic level, or possibly even smaller.
The partnership between humanity and that rolling disc is going to keep on going.